How's it going, everybody? Gunnar here. Welcome to the first rod review. This is the TFO Blaine Chocolate Big Fly in a 10 weight. Quick disclaimer before we jump into this. I don't have a relationship with TFO. I'm not on their pro team or anything. When I reached out to see if they would be interested in this video, I didn't say, can I have a rod and I'll do a review for you guys? No. I said, can I have a rod to give away so that my review will be unbiased? And I have no incentive to praise you guys. And they were so on board, it kind of blew me away. They were immediately like, yes, they're supporting me, they are supporting you guys, they are supporting this industry, and they are standing behind their product. And I just thought that was cool. They were excited to do it, to be able to give this to one of you guys. So a huge shout out to TFO for their support and just their willingness and their excitement. I think that really should go to their credit. But what we're gonna do is we are gonna unbox this. We're looking at tubes, we're looking at socks, we're gonna break down the full rod, the handle, the components, the Axiom technology. We're gonna get some first casts in here. This is not my first time casting this rod. I have spent probably 5 months in and out playing with this rod in different lines and things. We are going to run it through a whole host of different lines because it has a fairly large grain window 350 to 450. So we're going to kind of play in that spectrum and kind of find a sweet spot. And we're going to run it through its paces with big flies. This is the Blaine Chocolate Big Fly. I have a whole box of big flies, and I don't mean 5-inch flies and 6-inch flies, 10, 12, 14-inch synthetic, natural, beast, slammers, heavy, wind resistant. We're gonna do it. We're gonna do it. So, like and comment. I'll announce in about a week on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Make sure you know how YouTube works if you leave a comment and try to win this thing, because I've done this before with flies, and people leave comments, and I'm like, "You're the winner," and then I don't hear anything back, and I'm like, I'll pick somebody else, I guess. I don't know. So leave a comment if you know how it works, so that you can be entered in to win this guy. So let's get it rigged up, unbox it, and play in the St. Louis River. So this is the TFO BC Big Fly. It's a 350 to 450 grain window, 10 weight, 9 foot, extra fast, retailing at $449.95. You'll see it comes in a rod tube. I like that. I like to store my stuff protected and travel with it protected. It is easily adjustable if you want to sling that over your shoulder or tie that down. I like that. I think that's useful. I don't know why you'd have a tube if you're not going to have some way to carry it or use it. So yeah, props to that. One thing I love about TFO is they always have socks in their tubes, and this is really useful to me if you travel. Maybe you grab like 6 of these and throw them in a bigger tube, right? So all your rods are kind of protected. They're not going to rub against each other. You're not going to have any wear and tear or broken guides. It's nice for taking individual rods and putting them together in a group for international travel. I think that's slick. I love that they sewed this in. That might seem so insignificant, but I have a lot of rods that only have socks, and I don't know what they are unless I untie it, flip up the thing, pull out the butt, read the handle. Really simple piece of information there, but it's efficient, it's nice, it's useful. So I like that they did that. One thing is worth noting, these are an overseas rod. It is a made in Korea rod. If you are a big, made in USA manufacturing kind of guy that you want to support, TFO might not be your guys, but it has allowed them to bring some unbelievably high quality rods onto the market at very reasonable price points. And that's the niche, right? It's the overseas rod that's very high end, but it's at an affordable cost for everybody. And that's what overseas manufacturing is going to allow them to do. So something to be aware of. Typically you want to go from the tip down. I'll just get all the pieces out. That way you're not doing the heavy end first. You want to go tip down. These rods do have alignment dots. If you're not familiar with an alignment dot is, it allows you to basically get the guides rigged up by matching your dots, putting them in line, giving it just a quick once over, and it's pretty darn good. So aesthetically, it's just a straight stealth black blank with white inscriptions. I really like that. I like my rods to be black, or I like my rods to be white. I guess I don't really care, but I'm not super into like high detail rod stuff. Like, it's a tool, I just want it to be a tool. How that tool feels and operates is more important than fit and finish. So just stealth black to me is beautiful, elegant, simple. And then you have this really cool game changer right here on the reel seat. And the reel seat is round, but it does have a recessed kind of groove socket. It's got basically rails on it to guide your reel in so that your reel doesn't wobble around or loosen up, with an arrow so that you can line the reel tongues up and lock it in real easily without spinning this bottom one around, trying to get it to lock in there. So you got 3 strippers. These are the Black Pearl recoil guides by REC. They are flexible and bendable, which is really cool. It does freak me out to do that, but it totally does work, and they pop right back into place. These have a PVD finish, including the lightweight Black Pearl snake guides all the way up, and that coating is fairly tough, fairly durable. It's significantly lighter weight from the chrome plating, and the chrome plating is pretty, it gets pitted and cracked and wore down with tungsten lines. I cannot speak to the durability of the guides in a full tungsten setup setting over a long period of time. I haven't had the rod for that long. I did contact the guys at TFO and kind of asked if Blaine had seen anything, or if any of their guides running this for muskie have seen any wear and tear for heavy muskie use. The answer was no, not yet. So I can't speak to that end. That will be kind of a critical feature in another rod that we're going to review, and something to consider. We're starting out with a Rio Elite Predator. It is in a 10 weight. It's a 32-foot total head length. I think it runs 410 grains. And this is a 350 to a 450 grain rod. So that 400 grains, you would suspect, is about the sweet spot, right? So 350 is about a 9 weight in modern streamer lines. 400 is a 10 weight in modern streamer lines, and 450 is an 11. So they're basically saying it can handle 9 through 11. 10 is the middle. It's labeled as a 10 weight. That's what we're going off of with a 410 grain line. I will speak to the grain of the line and how I think rods should be designed here in a minute after we cast this guy. And what we're going to do to start is I want to evaluate the rod. I don't want to start with a huge fly. I want to see how the rod and the line are paired. So we're going to tie on something called Brammer's, sorry, Rio. We're going to put a Rio leader on there, but it's going to be Brammer's Bombadillo. Hopefully it becomes RIO'S Brammer's Bombadillo. I haven't submitted it yet, but it's my newest design. And it's basically a big game, saltwater, bucket mouth, micro deceiver at about 4 inches. It's pretty lightweight, pretty well balanced, and it should allow us to fish and have a fly on there. This could be, how you plan to use this 10 weight. If you're a saltwater guy or a big game guy, you might not be throwing 12-inch beast flies. But yeah, the plan is to start really, really close. And that's going to allow us to evaluate the rod basically in a underloaded state, right? I got, what is that, 4 feet, 5 feet of fly line? And I can cast this fly rod with only 5 feet of fly line. Now I got a really tight arc because I got a really small bend in the tip. And we're going to basically walk it out, maybe 1 or 2 strips at a time here. Yeah, the fly's got a little bit of weight to it. I still think we'll be able to take it to distance. And you'll see as we get more into the belly of this, I'm going to start having more rod arc. So the rod is going to travel at the tip a slightly longer path to match the bend in the rod. Look at that, that's really nice. And we are well, not even close to the head. So the head is still well within the guides. And this back section is the heaviest section. So once you get this color change right here out the tip, that'll be the full head length, which is about 32 feet. It is a sinking line, so I will have to retrieve it some before we pick it up and pop it. So my guess is that right there is about 350 grains, which is the low end of the window, and it is loading actually quite nicely. We'll walk that out maybe to the full head length here, which will be about 410 grains, so we'll get within the head. There's my head right there. Look at that. That feels pretty amazing. Nice tight loop. The fly's got a little extra weight on it with that saltwater hook. You can kind of see the leader buck over when it gets close. So now that we've got to the head, which is 410 grains, and we can kind of feel, hey, that sucker's loading. It's loading pretty close. This is a short, aggressive head, only being 30 feet long, but that is relevant. It's going to be painfully relevant here in about 5 minutes when I start running my mouth. Let's see how it shoots, because there's no point in carrying past the head on a weight forward line more than about 5 or 6 feet, right? Your overhang should be 1 to 10 feet at max, so it's a 32-foot head. You might carry 40 feet if you're a stud, but you don't need to. Once you hit that mark, did I hit backing? Yeah, there's backing right there. Once you hit that mark at about 35, 36 feet, you shoot the line. So let's see how it does with a 410 grain line, and we'll really shoot it and send it with a fly on there, mind you. So there's my head. Nearly a full line. We got a full line to backing. It didn't turn over super beautiful. The last 10 feet was kind of clunky. We'll see if I can do a little bit better here. Much happier. So that's a 100-footer with a fly on there, about a 4.5 inch fly. Saltwater hook, you know, it's probably the equivalent of something like a lefty's deceiver as far as wind resistance and water weight and hook style, because it is on a saltwater hook. I did forget to mention they have a built-in hook keeper right here, one on either side, depending on if you're a righty or a lefty, with a groove that goes all the way down the channel, which is nice. I do kind of prefer just the wire keeper up here, but that's your hook keeper. So let's go into this handle design, because it is a little atypical and it is streamer perfection. This might be my favorite aspect. This might be my favorite handle design that I've been able to cast. Material wise, it's composite. It's not just straight cork rings all the way front to back. One of the issues you have with just cork rings is they tend to split, or they'll even compress under your fingers for fighting a big fish. I have my old 10 weight that I brought to Brazil literally has a finger groove from my dominant hand from fighting, you know, 15-pound peacock bass. It's literally permanently compressed the cork. But this is a composite. It's got cork and rubber pressed together into the rings and then obviously shaped, and it gives it a really nice, it's not like tacky, but it is better with wet hands. It is better with kind of grimy hands. You know, if you're releasing fish, maybe I always throw my rod onto the bank when I catch stuff. And so my cork's almost always wet. And this is a more durable option. It's also slightly better for the environment, because cork, it takes a long time to make and it's not necessarily renewable. It takes a long time to grow. So it's a very interesting material choice that lends itself to even the kind of more better durability in that regard. The shape of it though is fantastic. So you have your full wells plus a little bit extra. That little bit extra is everything on the back cast, and the rear complements it. Now I know this is like musky style figure eight. Everybody says, you know, the extended grip is to help with the figure eight. I agree. I've used standard rods with a standard fighting butt for like 5 years for doing figure eights. I don't find it to be hugely advantageous. What the extended flat non-round butt section does with the extended front on top of that full wells is it gives it a perfectly flat contour down the full length of your forearm. Now for your forehand cast, that doesn't matter really squat. I don't choke up when I do my forehand. I'm all the way down at the bottom of the reel. I will pivot my wrist out toward the water like I'm throwing a ball, and I'll use my big wrist muscle, not my kind of bladed finesse muscles. When you're doing a backhand, I can now choke way up here. The leverage of the line is going to force the rod into my forearm so that I don't have to do anything with my hand other than hook the rod. If you suffer from wrist fatigue, this handle will blow your mind. If you can open stance cast, backhand presentation, this will reduce wrist fatigue tenfold. I mean, you'll go from tenfold. Just, it's pretty cool. And that flat butt, it's not going to dig into your arms, it's not going to dig into your muscles, you're not going to bruise yourself. So let me show you some backhands here. Try to get a nice line pile here so everything doesn't get screwed up on my delivery here. So I'm grabbing all the way at the top of that cork. You can see it covers my whole forearm, and all I have to do is pop my tricep. And it just goes 100 feet. All you gotta do is get your shoulder out, pop your tricep with a good haul, and she's gone. Now again, we just have that 4-inch, 4.5-inch deceiver style fly on there. This becomes even more amazing when you put, you know, a 12-inch fly on there. It's so nice. So those are just a handful of back casts. You'll see that become infinitely more important as the lines or the line style and the flies get bigger. So what we're going to do is we're going to run this rod with different grain lines and different line styles. We started out with a 10-weight streamer specific spay taper, the Rio Elite Predator, total head weight 410 grains. This is the Rio Elite Predator in a 9-weight, total head weight 370. So this rod has a 350 to 450, so this should be at the low end of this grain window, still within a streamer specific line style. Let's see how it does. It's got a lot of coil to it right now. It's been on this reel for for a long time. It's been on this reel. I haven't fished a 9-weight in about a year. I'm not gonna lie, that feels pretty darn good. The 410 was a little heavy compared to that. If you were gonna fish a smaller fly, 370 feels really, really nice. Now, if you're gonna underline it, you better not stand on your line. So that was really interesting. 370 grains, felt pretty good. The rod felt light, responsive, jumpy, but it doesn't not feel those things with the 410. And there's a 40 grain difference here between 370, 1 to 3, and 410. Yeah, 40 grain difference. And what you're gonna feel is a significant jump in swing rate. So the swing weight, you have the weight of your fly line, it's acting on a 9-foot lever, and all of that pressure and all that rotation has to be resisted by the wrist during the acceleration of the arc of the rod. More or less, right? Sometimes when I speak off the cuff, it's not technically accurate, but that's what you're feeling, right? You have a 9-foot lever arm, the length, the weight of that fly line is being multiplied by that height to create basically a rotational force that your wrist has to resist, not only resist, but power through and pop out of. So a 40 grain difference makes the rod's swing weight significantly higher. But you could say that with every rod. The interesting thing is the rod is very light, responsive, jumpy, accurate with the 370. It's also still very light, responsive, and accurate with the 410. So let's put something heavier on. I should have something like 435, and I should have something around 450, and let's see how the rod does. Now this setup is a whole different beast altogether, but it's a 10-weight outbound short shooting head at 435 grains. It is not a fully integrated line, so I have the head separate with 100 foot of RIO'S grip shooter and 50 pound. So quite a significantly different setup, designed for maximum distance, but also significantly heavier, right? So this is like 65 grains heavier than that 9-weight line, 25 heavier than the 10-weight line that we started with. Let's see how the rod tip does. I'm mostly interested in the rod tip. Let's see how high the swing weight is. Let's see if I need to switch to choking up and backhanding and letting the rod, you know, get that wrist fatigue. Let's see what we can do here. that's probably 115, 120 feet-ish. Gonna kind of stretch some of this as I bring it in just so I don't have as much coils on the rocks here. That was dang near 130 feet or so. Let's switch up to a backhand. It definitely has more swing weight, but it's really responding well to that load. Like, that is not over compressed at all. The tip is not buckling under that shooting head in the slightest. It's about, so there's 15 feet of grip. That was about 15 feet of mono, so 30 feet with a 30-foot head. So it'd be 30, 30, 60. So this would be a 60-foot cast. So with this heavier weight, you're getting a little bit more bend in the rod. I'm gonna open up my arc just a little bit more. Match the arc to the bend. It's a heavier line, you're slowing down, you're getting more bend in it. Open it up a little bit, give it more transition. But this thing is handling 435 just fine. So this will kind of be the ultimate test here, but I have a 450 grain 11 weight, 9 inch per second deep dredging line that I fish on my 11 weight. This is a full 11 weight line. I think it's the RIO striper. I'll have to look it up, I forget. But 450 grains of 9 inch sec, full sink. It's got like a 35 inch head, maybe a 37 or a 35 foot head, maybe a 37 foot head, something like that. But let's see if the max grain window, how the rod does. Evaluate the head here. Slow it down, more arc. Oh, yeah, plenty of power, absolutely plenty of power. You could see the rod, so there's backing. You could really see the rod starting to flatten out there. We were getting maximum on it. Then maybe we'll do a backhand for good measure. This is not, look at the tip. That's the full head out. The tip is handling that just fine, dude. Just fine, even with weeds, a full fly line with weeds on the pickup. That's pretty impressive. I thought the tip was gonna start giving here. So there's my head. There's a full line. Got that pinned against my forearm, nice and tight. So that's the max grain for the window, 450. That was not lethargic at all. You do open your stroke up to compensate for the extra bend in the rod, but it just had power. It just had power left over. It didn't feel lethargic. So that's, I got about 10 feet of line there and a 35 foot head. So it's like 45 feet here. Just focus on some. So 450 grains, we'll get the head out and we'll just see how accurate it is with the max grain window. Kind of see if the tip is getting all wiggly. So I'll just kind of pick a target. That tip does not care. The tip of the rod does not care about 450 grains. It just doesn't care. It's like it's fine. That's deadly. Because when I had the 370, it felt like, whoa, this thing's like a sniper. And now I have 450, and it does not feel any less sniper-ish. There's a bubble. I'm gonna hit that bubble. Yeah, that's pretty, that tip is not lethargic under 450 grains in the slightest. That's really cool. So I suspect this video is gonna be on the long side. I got a lot of stuff to go over, a lot of stuff to talk about, a lot of things to flesh out, right? And what I want to talk about is how I think a big fly rod should be designed, because I have fished, 10 weights are probably the one rod weight that I have the most experience with, the most time fishing. I have owned 10 weights for the past probably 6 or 7 years, and it's probably the rod I spend 75% of my season behind. That was an epic take from a smallmouth down there, chasing pike and muskie. And I have fished mostly generic 10 weights. And the problem is you know, in the gear world, I feel like they put so much more attention, not just on power, but how the power and the action complement each other for a specific technique. And if you look at, you could just look at a series, just pick a St. Croix series, like a Bass X rod or a Mojo Bass rod. And it's not like there's like 3 rods in there, or it's not like they just have a light, medium, heavy, heavy. They have, like, this rod is the best for pitching. This rod is the best for frogging. This rod is the best for spinner blades or whatever you're doing, or live bait or vertical jigging. Like, they get so nuanced into not just the power, but the power plus the length, and how the power and the length with the taper between the two are integrated to create something that is perfect for a technique. And in fly rods, it just doesn't seem like there's that kind of attention. Everything is just about 9 feet. Basically, you have 5, 6, 7, 8. You just have the power rating. It's 9 foot, and almost everything is fast action. Everything is very generic. And yet within, you know, you could buy 10 weights that are 9 foot fast action, and they're all going to have different tapers. Literally the diameter reduction across the blank, even though they claim to be fast action, they're not going to be the same. And what I have found is when you take a generic 10 weight, most of the time, if they're fast, they're going to bend from about here up, and that tip is going to do all of the work, and the midsection and the butt are going to be overly stiff. Now, everybody complains about the overly stiff mid and butt. Like, you're going to get tennis elbow and there's too much shock and too much vibration. And I will say this rod didn't really have any of that. It didn't really have shock or vibration issues at all. But the problem that I have is the tips. Because a big fly rod, it doesn't cast a big fly. That's not what it's for. It's for casting a modern streamer line. And the modern streamer lines, they took what is essentially, you know, you'd have your 30-foot 10-weight rating on the IFTA standards or whatever that stupid system is, and then they'd have a full head weight that would be about 400 grains, maybe at 45 feet or 50 feet, it'd be 400 grains. And what they said to us, 50 feet, that's how much we're carrying. We should take that head weight and condense it down to 30 feet, make it fatter, more aggressive, more resilient to overcome wind resistance of big flies. That's what they did. The lines didn't get heavier. They only got heavier relative to how long they are. They literally got fatter. They took the full head weight that most people could carry and they shrunk it to 30 feet. So everything's listed as 2 lines heavy, but that's a bunch of BS. They basically just designed everything for the full head weight instead of for 30 feet because it's arbitrary. So everything's designed now for full head weight. And I think a modern streamer line, a modern streamer rod, should be designed for modern streamer lines. And what happens is if you take those really condensed 30-foot heads and you put it on a standard fast action rod, the tip will buckle beyond belief. It can't handle that kind of load. The load is not being pushed down into the mid and the butt. The tip is just going to compress flat and noodle. It's not going to have any authority over that line whatsoever. You'll lose all accuracy because it's maximally compressed at the tip. The swing weight is ungodly high. It's so unforgiving on your wrist. It's not fun to cast at all. Everything feels heavy, everything feels lethargic, nothing feels accurate. So when I'm looking for a rod to throw big flies, I'm looking at a rod that can throw modern streamer lines without the tip becoming a noodle. The tip, to me, and how that then bleeds into the mid and the butt is the critical part of a rod designed for big flies. That's it. The components, I can, you know, plus or minus live without. The handle, even though this handle is near perfection, I can live with or without. The reel seat, meh, I don't really care. Is it a 1-piece or 2-piece or a 4-piece? You know, you got some travel considerations or maybe a little bit of feel considerations in there, but it's the taper that makes it or break it, and it's how that tip is able to track and deal with the compression, the extreme compression of a modern streamer fly line. So the question is does the big fly does the Blaine Chocolate Big Fly handle modern streamer lines. And that's all we've put on it. I have only put 30, 32 foot, 35 foot, 370, 410, 435, and 450 grain lines on this thing that are short, compact, fat, aggressive, and it has handled every single one of them. That it's quite impressive. I thought with the 450 it might feel lethargic. It did not feel lethargic. In fact, it felt like it had more power just waiting. Just waiting. All you had to do was open up that arc a little bit, match the arc of the rod to the bend that that extra line was putting into it, and the tip did not overcompress. It just kind of put more load into the mid and the butt, and then it just wha-boom, flung the crap out of it. Now, if I didn't, so I reached out to TFO and I was like, explain your Axiom technology, because that is what this is designed with. It's designed with the highest modulus graphite they have, and it's designed with their Axiom technology. And I was like, can you define that? What is that? It's probably proprietary, but you know, is there something you can relay to me? And if before I would have reached out, I would have thought they probably put an 11 weight tip on a 10 weight midsection and a 10 weight butt. That's kind of how I would visualize it, because the tip is not being compressed into a noodle, and yet if you go higher than that, it transfers very nicely into the mid and the butt. Because it is an extra fast rod, it is a tip driven rod, but the tip just, it stays in control even when you're engaging the full blank. And that's pretty special, that's pretty important, and I think they did a really good job. So the Axiom technology, it could be they did an 11 and a 10 and a 10-ish, or it could be their technology. And so what they have is they have, I think it's Kevlar, I think is what they told me, and it's in a double helix pattern, so think of like kind of like a DNA spiral that goes up the rod, and it's to buffer the carbon against compression so that the carbon fiber cannot be overloaded into noodle format, if you get what I'm saying. It's basically supporting it so that it can come out of that bend without just flattening and being lethargic. There's something there to support it. And so that's their Axiom technology, and it's in a handful of the rods, the Axiom 2, the Blaine Chocolate Big Fly, and they have a brand new rod, and I'm gonna cut the camera here because I gotta look it up because I forgot what it's called. No, I remember. The Blitz. The Blitz. So that's their technology. That's in those 4 rod models, Axiom, Axiom 2, Big Fly, and the Blitz. And if it is chalked up that technology is what is allowing that tip to be able to track under that wide of a grain window, that's some pretty good tech. That's pretty sweet. So that's how that's what I'm looking for in a rod designed for big flies. That's kind of how I would classify it. If it's designed to cast big flies, it has to handle modern streamer lines without the tip becoming a soft, lethargic noodle that is inaccurate and buckling under the load during maximum power applications, which would be dumping a full line. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to switch back to the 410. That really did kind of feel like a sweet spot. Maybe the 435, but I'm kind of moving away from the separate head and line systems. I prefer the simpler, fully integrated line. So we'll go to the 410 Rio Elite Predator, and we're going to put a clip on. I don't usually fish clips, but we're going to put a clip on, and we're just going to run through a whole box of flies, and everything's going to be massive, because that's what this rod is supposed to do. So let's do it. All right, let's start out with Big Fly Perfection. It's a 12-inch Pops Beast on a dropper shank. Is that big enough for you? It's the one I tied for Masters of the Fly. Masters on the Fly. Let's see if there's a muskie hanging out here. Now this is a T-bone style hook shank bucktail brush with some synthetic in it, and it is not weighted. It is wind resistant beyond belief. Let's see how this rod does with shock. So I'm probably going to open the casting arc up to absorb it. So instead of keeping it high and tight, that was same distance as the Beast, but instead of keeping it high and tight, I opened it up so that as the rod was extended and I caught the shock didn't have any leverage, and it just went right down the blank. So I'm going to choke up. I'm going to let the rod pin itself against my arm. and pretty effortlessly, without a lot of strain whatsoever, deliver a 13-inch fly that's heft. It is the definition of heft. And now I have a slammer here, Sadati slammer, that I overweighted. So that's the weight. It's just, I didn't quite tie it right. It's close. I've been trying to get this slammer perfected for like a year now, the dropper shank slammer, and I can't quite get it. It is really close. It keels like a dream. It's got some good walk to it because of all the momentum of the weight, but it's not casting the way my original versions of Sadati slammer were on hooks. Those ones just casted better. This one is not quite doing it. Sorry, now we got to deal with the water weight and the water weight. All right, look at that. I mean, you can still get it out there. That's still a 75-foot cast or so. So it's like 4 shanks, 2 treble hooks, and a wiggle tail. It's a beast. It's designed to be like a European style soft plastic rigged fly. That's how I would, if you were going to cast a really wind resistant fly that's putting a lot of extra stress on your wrist, man, choke up, pin it, backhand all day long. That's what this rod was meant for. It's handling all these just fine. The rod is exceptional, fantastic rod. The fact that it could load literally between 370 and 450 grains, and that 450 grain was a full sink line, really low diameter, well, really low air resistance with a lot of heat to it. And the tip was never overbuckled or over compressed, noodly slow, lethargic. Everything you would want as far as how the tip is going to behave and respond to a modern fly line. PVD coated components, lightweight, resistant, flexible, the Black Pearl REC guides, recoil guides by REC. Everything, wonderful handle, composite handle, handle design, layout, extended foregrip, rear grip, pin the whole thing against your wrist. And extra fast. I never thought I would like an extra fast. It's a pretty sweet job, TFO. Make sure you guys like and comment. I will pick a winner in a week. I'll announce it everywhere that I am so that hopefully it finds itself to a new home. It's still got the full warranty. It's a lifetime warranty on defects from manufacturing. And then if there's kind of a user error, they have a pretty awesome service department that will get you hooked up. So the warranty is in the rod tube that it'll be shipped with. Like and comment. Pretty good feedback on a pretty legit rod. Might be one I need to pick up myself. Thanks for watching, guys. I will catch you in the next rod review. Hopefully in a week or two, we'll be looking at the Sage Payload 11 weight. See you then.